I need to speak very quietly because it's the early hours. I'm shattered. I'm absolutely shattered. The title of this video is to do with Brighton Housing Trust, and there's someone called Lorraine Blackwell who was under the thumb to protect convicted criminals, because that's what the council tell them. The council have the council and the police protect convicted criminals, and they exploit the vulnerable. The HERALD Clark, the individual who was mentioned in the national news as mugging the elderly with her mother, Dion Clark, this individual that was mentioned in the national news, if you Google this evil mother and daughter, because even the BBC covered it, Lorraine Blackwell said at the time, and she didn't want me recording her, and this is still all very new to me, recording people and filming and all that sort of thing. It's a miracle that I've actually got a YouTube channel. Basically, they at the time said, this Lorraine Blackwell said, the council say HERALD Clark has got to stay at the property that I fled, basically for my life, my health and my sanity. Hence why I self-funded the Cavendish Hotel for 9 months with back pip. And so the council said that this vile creature had to stay there, and even though I recorded, Sergeant Simmons told me to purchase a dictaphone, which I did, and then they arrested me for it. As I said, there are many times I could have sued the police, but because when you're vulnerable, when you're not well, they basically want me to end up in the gutter. So I recorded the Riverbourne house residents, elderly neighbours supporting me. I've actually got a recording of a 71-year-old man. I know 71's not elderly anymore, but he said to me, he described HERALD Clark. And I said, yes, and then she went on to assault me, attack me. And the elderly resident that supported me, as you can hear on YouTube, she's got her window open and she's supporting me with my phone call to the police. Yet the council and the police were protecting her. And just a few months later, she was jailed for a second time. They had 22 previous convictions, but they'd been on the Isle of Wight doing the same thing. So they'd been released from prison, according to Hampshire Constabulary, just to do the same thing again. Anyway, this Brighton Housing Trust, Lorraine Blackwell said that they had to protect this convicted criminal who was doing the hell what she liked, mugging the elderly. The BBC covered it, but the BBC won't tell you that a vulnerable woman, i.e. me, brave Bryony, battles on, yeah? I even helped a plainclothes police officer who needed backup. He had a man on his back. Yeah. Is there any man who's really worthy of me when they're all pansies? Yeah, the ones that join the police. I mean, and they kept torturing me, and you can see on my Facebook wall what they did to me, and I'll be speaking out on the street about this. Separate to that, I want to mention this Channel 4 documentary. No, not the one about Adamant. Not the one that Adamant wrote to me about his demons, his Baphomet demons. No, this is another Satanic Channel 4 documentary. And it's to do with the Hampstead case. Because Ray Savage is an ex-police sergeant. Hang on a minute, excuse me. And he was a speaker at a Truthers conference I went to. It's a very small world. I've met a lot of people. For those who don't know, to others I may sound like a broken record, but my videos are for people who need help and need truth. Ray Savage dated the mother of children I played with when I was a child, and he comes from a small village not too far from here. Actually, it's closer to Seaford, which is where I lived. And he met Ella Draper, the mother of the children at the heart of the Hampstead case. Now, I don't know what on earth to believe, because obviously I also met John Alexander Patterson in the psychiatric unit, and I met victims of satanic ritual abuse. I think the South African lady was genuine. She said a Freemason. I've worked with a Freemason. I know what it's about. Well, I do now. But that was over 20 years ago. But this, I know that satanic ritual abuse is rife. It's quite common in South Africa. I know that now. This South African white lady was very well spoken, like an aristocrat, because she'd been brought up in a satanic aristocratic cult, and she said that a Freemason got her in there. So yes, all that stuff about eating babies and pedophilia is real. The problem with things like this Channel 4 documentary is you don't know who's an actor and who's an actress. Ray Savage was targeted by the 77 Brigade, and he said, I'm being targeted by them, which makes sense. But then there are also a lot of unhinged, what my conclusion is that where there's truth, there's lies. Because several of these people that I've encountered, it's a very, very small world, let me tell you that. I mean, John Alexander Patterson was from Seaford, like me, but he went up to London with Neela Berry. He was exposing the baby organ harvesting. And the man who set up Crime Stoppers was from Seaford. Yeah, very small place. Adamant's best friend, who may or may not have been murdered, who told me to build bridges with my transgender sister. She died under suspicious circumstances. She's on a list of celebrities. It's a very small world, I can tell you that. But the man who set up Crime Stoppers it's absolutely fascinating. And Andy Devine, before he turned funny, and I have to be careful what I say, but because he had an affiliation with one of the women who was in the Channel 4 documentary who turned funny with me. Several people in the Truthers community were funny with me. It took guts for me to phone John Wedger, only for him to say that I must have deserved what happened to me and he couldn't wait to terminate the call. And then I hear bad things about him. Then you got Caroline Stevens, who prayed for me and then threatened me, and other people have had these experiences. And you've got to be very, very, very careful. You've got to have discernment. But that's why, just like the Freemasons, they have to put truth out there. Even, controlled opposition. My partner believes that John O'Looney is not a Freemason, but I actually agreed with Caroline Stevens before she turned funny that it's to do that hand gesture in quotation marks is uncomfortable. And why would you do the Satanic? Or was it that one? Was it 666? I don't know. But to do it, I do quotation marks like this because that's a dumb way. I do it all the time. But my partner is convinced that John O'Looney was, I don't know if he was a Freemason once, but Dr. Campbell was, and you just don't know. But the Freemasons believe they're controlled opposition. They believe in putting truth with lies, mixing it up because of their satanic, backwards morality. Evil is good, good is evil, kind of thing, that duality thing. Excuse me. But definitely, where there's truth, there's lies, and you do have to have discernment. So just because maybe the mothers in that documentary to do with the Hampstead case, maybe they were innocent, however, that's not to say, in my personal opinion, that someone like Sabine McNeil, a woman in her 70s who's a social worker, just as Jeanette Archer's bodyguard said to me in the canteen queue at the Truthers conference, why would you lie? Exactly. Why? Why would anyone? They'd have to be mad to lie about satanic ritual abuse. You'd have to be crazy to make it up. And who am I to judge? I can't. Well, I'm not going to, obviously. It is out there, but a lot of what they say is true anyway, because of the Tavistock Institute is real. You know what? We know when something's good or evil. Well, having said that, when I was a child, I was heavily my psychic gift. Well, my mother's blood mother was, she adopted her. She was a teacher. My mother's blood mother. My mother's blood mother could read tea leaves, and she saw that someone was going to have a baby boy and it died. Because you think, oh, tea leaves, that sounds like a load of nonsense, but it's not. It's just as dangerous as a Ouija board. If you are delving into the scripture is very clear about what we should and shouldn't do. But some of us have those gifts that we should not, or should I say heightened awareness, because they're not gifts. They can be, they're evil, so they're curses. But I suppose I'm gifted in that now I know about astrology. My partner's friend said it's real. He's a saved Christian, and but he said what I say. He said it's real. It's just that witches and warlocks have messed about with it. Because even Alan Horvath used to talk about the stars, the constellations, and Aquarius and all that. But astrology, I mean, the Freemason and Scorpio and the occult, not a good combination. Plus Freemasonry. Yeah, a Scorpio Freemason, and I'm not talking about adamant. I'm talking about the dirty old man that I worked with. Because Jimmy Savile was a Scorpio as well, and he was a Freemason, but he was a wizard. And he was born on Halloween, which in the Satanic calendar, birthdays are the highest day in the Satanic calendar, bar that of Samhain, aka Halloween. And the point I'm making is astrology is evil. But I'm going to say something, because I know what I'm talking about. The Freemason was not the first person to say to me, your birthday is very close to the Pisces Aries cusp. And my careers advisor turned friend said that as well. And I knew what he meant. I knew what people meant when they said that. I'm close to the Aries cusp. I'm 3 days away from the Aries cusp. And funnily enough, Jeanette Archer is, I think her birthday's the 21st of March. And that would make sense why I can relate to her, because the Aries thing is a very confident, the Aries, Pisces Aries cusp is a very confident, strong. I think she shares a birthday with that Rachel Caruso, the MK Ultra victim. So, and I can see similarities in both of them. But only I know what I'm talking about, unless someone else understands astrology in the same way. But since I've been with my partner, I don't talk about astrology. I don't give it, well, I do. I've renounced it, but it's always there. Well, you know, which is understandable, really. My partner is on the Cancer Leo cusp. And it's not something I can really talk about, though. My godmother is on her birthday is on the 22nd of February, and I remember she got me a beautiful Pisces picture when I was a child. But she's actually on the Aquarius cusp. So it's very different to... But anyone who... I had these books that are actually Illuminati books. I didn't know it at the time, but it's to do with numerology, tarot, and they've got Illuminati pictures on the front of the book that I didn't know at the time. But they're big books. It's called the Book of Relationships, and it shows you all the celebrities who are born in every week of the year, because your star sign is divided into weeks. Week 1, week 2, week 3, and then the cusp. And then you've got the cusp before that, and so on. And you can look at all these Hollywood celebrities and their relationships with... So it's Lucifer, the light bearer. It's just a very dark, endless, like, rabbit holes that I fear for young people, because they could get lost down a rabbit warren of darkness. And Darren brought me to the narrow path to life, to salvation, to Yahweh's name, Yeshua HaMashiach. So, yeah, but it's good that I've been there and I've come out of it and I've got that knowledge. And as my partner said, knowledge is power. But the book of birthdays, like, I was born on the 16th of March, so my numerology, 1 + 6 is 7. And what is it? It's something to do with the king falling from the castle, the castle's on fire, and, you know, but that's tarot, you see. And that's something that, unfortunately, my mother's blood brother was into tarot, and he had a dodgy funeral, pagan funeral. I didn't go. But you've got to be, you know, my mother said Bryony's the one to go to for astrology. And yes, it makes you feel special. But even when I was heavily into it, when I was 12, people were warning me, but not telling me why it was evil, like on Christian camp. And I was bullied on Christian camp, so there were damaged girls on Christian camp. It wasn't a happy place. The things we did were nice, but, you know, big dormitory, and I even noticed a hand symbol on the letter for the girls, Christian camp for girls. But anyway, yeah, it's kind of, you know, it's everywhere you go, really, isn't it? Freemasonry, I mean, it's everywhere. So the point I'm making is they mix lies with truth. Excuse me. And yeah, so it was very interesting seeing that Channel 4 documentary that was I think it was it filmed last year, but uploaded recently. But it's a very small world, because one of the people who turned funny with me, who had a link to Andy Devine, who was John Patterson's power of attorney, she was in it. She was in the Channel 4 documentary. I want to know if John Alexander Patterson is safe, because I accidentally met the people's hero in Eastbourne psychiatric unit. So I was so embarrassed. I thought, he must think I'm really thick, because I sat with him in the dining room and he said, this is the intelligent table. But he didn't understand why my brain could not process the stuff that he was saying, because I've got like I don't know if it's a learning difficulty, but it's like a blip. It could be trauma, or it could be a learning difficulty, or it could be both. But it's processing information. It's easy for me to open my mouth, but to concentrate is something else. But I understand the spirit realm, and I understand now that super empaths are made to feel like, to look in the mirror and make them think that they are a narcissist, when in actual fact, the effects of narcissistic abuse, because they've got such a heightened consciousness and awareness, they think, am I the narcissist? And they're not. That's the abuse. It goes round and round and round and round and round. That's the effect of narcissistic abuse, which can kill and give you cancer and heart disease. I'm still here though, and I am a super empath, and I'm going on a journey. And I'm going to say what happened a few hours ago in the kitchen, because I stood up for myself. I've been having anxiety attacks in the past few days, and funnily enough, I'm getting suggestions on my YouTube to do with super empaths and people who are awake, who must keep away from others. And in the description, there are people just like me. I'm inundated with all kinds of videos. I get all kinds of videos, the preachers, the ones who are awake, the ones that are exposing the LGBT, satanic agenda, everything. You know, I'm getting everything. It's like being in a candy shop. There's too much to look at, too much information, but it's good information. It's discerning information. So a few hours ago, I stood up for myself to a tenant whom she's been so obnoxious. I didn't realise I'd moved into a nutty house with nutty people where things don't work. The landlady who attempted to illegally evict me, who flew over here and assaulted me. And, they're just crazy. They're absolutely crazy. The tenant that said she didn't have a problem with me, because there are now two other people in this house who can't stand each other, who've then projected onto me. Now, the tenant downstairs who said she doesn't have a problem with me has turned very unpleasant, and for whatever reason. Now, she's a primary school teacher, but she's behaving like a child, because the other day I asked her very nicely, as you will see in one of my past videos. I got the camera. It is now I understand now why people have smartphones. I don't have a smartphone. But I recorded myself very nicely asking her when she turned funny. She knocked on my door and she just... sudden change. And it was after that she changed, and I very nicely, very politely asked if she wouldn't play her music in the kitchen. And she lets herself be known. You know, I'm all for people singing and playing their music, but this is like someone who's got to let themselves, you know. It's almost like a territorial thing. You know, this is my house. My mark is in the kitchen. I mean, even Mr. Horrible, Nasty Troublemaker said she practically owns the kitchen. And she does. But I'd asked very nicely if she wouldn't play her music in the kitchen in front of her partner, and she ignored me. I said I had a headache, and she blatantly ignored me. Then Saturday, Shabbat, I'm not sleeping at night anyway because of insomnia, but 8:30 in the morning she was playing her music. Fair enough, but I could hear it through my headphones. which I had on full blast on my laptop. I was trying to listen to the sound of wind to stay asleep. I didn't get any sleep. I went downstairs and I even knocked on her door, and I very politely said, "Could you please turn it down?" And she was like, "It's daytime. It is daytime." And she said, "I've already turned it down." And then she slammed her door. Oh, she shut it very abruptly. Anyway, I had to knock again because I could still hear it. I can hear it outside. It is just, it's a polite request. 8:30 in the morning. And when you've just asked very nicely if someone could turn it down and they're not turning their music down. So anyway, a few hours ago, I think she's trying to be a bully, and yet she's a primary school teacher. So, because she's now behaved like a child towards me, I've now got to treat her like one. And I thought I was going to be sick earlier because I've been cooking, which I haven't done for a few years because I was attacked by demented morons. And I've managed to make 2 shepherd's pies with flavouring. I've used rosemary from outside and all the ingredients with mushrooms and tomatoes and crushed swede and carrots. So that's good. I've made 2. So I've been up doing that, fighting anxiety, feeling like I'm going to throw up. That's why I look so pale. I'm suffering with insomnia. And you know what? I had my potatoes in the microwave, as she said. She came in like this. She said, this is honestly, I am not exaggerating. She said, "Take your stuff out so I can put my stuff in." And I looked at her. I turned and I looked at her and I said, try to remember exactly what was said. I said, "Ask me nicely, say please. I won't be bullied by you." And she was looking at me. I said, I took my time waiting to take the potato out of the microwave, and I said, "I asked you very nicely." I wasn't pointing. I just looked at her and I said, "I asked you very nicely the other day. I was very polite and I said, could you not play your music in the kitchen when I had a headache, and you ignored me?" And I said, you were playing your music and you wouldn't turn it down yesterday, despite me being so ill and having this insomnia, which I didn't need to explain because she knows I've been attacked, and she knows that I haven't found out how my father died 2 years ago. And she went to put her stuff in. Anyway, I took my thing out. I took my time looking her in the eye and saying this. And then she put her stuff in there and I said, "You're supposed to be a primary school teacher." And she went, "Well, you're an adult." I said, "If you behave like a child, I'll just treat you like one. And I think the phrase they now use is getting owned, because she gave me a hand gesture. I think I read that hand gesture as saying, that body language was her way of saying, okay, you win. Because she went, she brought back into her, she still mumbled something, I think, but I said manners cost nothing. This is what children, it's worse than dealing with children. But then it takes me back to my grandmother, you see. I do not, I was shaking afterwards, but I was like, thank you, Abba Yahweh, thank you. Because I stood up. I won. They're trying to intimidate me. The landlady assaulted me. It is what a lot of people say. People have been saying it to me for years. They're jealous of you, Bryony. And they are. And I'm not going to let this, I'm not going to I'm still here. That's not to say that suicide should not be taken seriously because, oh, you're resilient. No. I've had to pray so hard with my head touching the concrete. When I slept rough, I put my head on the concrete, just like in biblical times, in days of old, when people prayed so hard. I had my head on the ground. I've had PCSOs say to me, Bryony, most people would have given up a long time ago, and I'll be more angry than you. That's a public servant saying that to me. And that was years ago, a public servant saying to me that someone in my position would have given up years ago before that. This is Abba Yahweh. I'm telling you, in these last days of confusion, I'm telling you, that's a primary school teacher. And whilst I don't want to be rude about someone's appearance, and I wouldn't be, I'm going to make a joke here. Sometimes she has a ring through her nose. And she looks like a bull. Like in those old cartoons, you've got the bull with the ring through the nose. And it's like, I need to talk about red flags. It's like, I might as well get a red sheet and go, yeah, go on then. Hit me, come on. No, but like as if I'm a matador, but obviously that's cruel, Cruel to the bull, not the bully primary school teacher. Obviously, I'm making a dark joke here, just a bit of a joke. But obviously bullfighting in Spain, it's so cruel what they do to those poor bulls. They throw spears at them. It's very cruel. But I'm talking about like the Mickey Mouse cartoon. The one that turned me on, that got me fancying Mickey Mouse back in the 1930s, that old cartoon. Yeah. With the bull with the... but talk about bull ring. You've got to laugh though. You've got to stand up for yourself. But yeah, I've had a little victory today, but that's a massive one. It's a massive one when I've been broken and I'm building myself back up again. So that's 3 things I wanted to say. Brighton Housing Trust that closed my case. to do with my housing benefit, because the only reason why I'm here is because the council took my emergency accommodation, and I've got good news. The legal ombudsman are on my side. So that's a fingers up to that corrupt legal aid law firm. Yes, it's only now that I'm mentioning your name, Law Stop. And my paralegal she is brainwashed because she's using pronouns. Like, oh, I didn't know that Jemima was a girl's name. And good news for the there's a gym, a massive gym in America. One woman's complaint about a 12-year-old girl who was terrified, sharing a changing room with a towel round herself, with a man who had a penis in there who identified as a female. They've lost £40 million overnight because of that one brave woman who spoke out for that one child. So good on her. You know, this thing about sharing transgender toilets and all that rubbish. But as for that primary school teacher, well, the children aren't going to learn manners from her, are they? And there are so many reasons why they're taking them out of the schools. That could be one reason. I mean, my own grandmother, I loved her. My adoptive grandmother, who died when I was 8 years old, she'd be 119 now, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. She'd be 120 at the end of this year. If my grandma was alive, she lived through 2 world wars. She was 8 when the Titanic sank. I was 8 when she died. She gave my mother a privileged upbringing during the war. In terms of, well, not rich, but, you know, as in, you know, love and a good upbringing. And when I was about 5 or 6, my grandmother she had ulcerated legs. She was very frail and had false teeth. You know, when old people were old. No offence to grandma, but you don't see that kind of frailty nowadays. And grandma said, pick that up. She had a picker-upper. And I was about 5 or 6 at the time. I was probably about 6. And I said, no, grandma, what do you say? And she was a teacher herself. And she said, please, because they go back to being children again. Oh, I love my grandma so much. I live in the past. So it's not always a bad thing living in the past if it helps your sanity. The trauma, I could use that trauma. Because people always want to invalidate your trauma. Oh, leave it in the past. Leave it narcissistic. Leave it in the past. In actual fact, I'm not a negative person because my partner will tell you that, well, I hope he would, that all I ever talk about is the good stuff. And it's just there's a lot of pain. A year later, after my grandma died, we had to give away the dog. You imagine being 7 years old and you're coming home with a puppy. I mean, my eldest sister, my mother did something a little bit cruel, but she didn't mean to. You know that phrase, I'm going to see a man about a dog? Well, when my eldest sister was 10, my mum came home and she was like, where's the dog? And she's like, what are you talking about? Poor Tanya thought she was coming home with a dog. I would be the same. But when I was 7 years old, my mother didn't tell me she was actually going to get this puppy, and I was sitting in the back with a puppy. But then 2 years later, we gave him away and he was my best friend, and I pushed my mother off me. The one person that you love so much in all the world, and you're pushing her off. I'm pushing her off me. And she said to me, Bryony, she said in tears, I was 9 years old, she said, I didn't want to get rid of him. I love him. I love Geordie. But I can't afford to keep him anymore. Now that's love. And she'd get angry, as I do, seeing homeless people with dogs on the street. Those poor miserable dogs. I'm 42. I'm living in this bloody room. I would love to have I'd be happy with a hamster. Happy with birds on the windowsill, and that kind of thing. But anyway, there we go. I've covered those 3 areas. The Channel 4 documentary, Brighton Housing Trust, that closed my housing benefit case, that protected the criminals. And, one more thing. I started to say something and I didn't finish. The man who set up Crime Stoppers is from Seaford, because John Alexander Patterson said this, because he was from the same town as me, Seaford. Brian SETCHFIELD from Seaford. I could go down to Seaford Police Station and I could ask for Brian SETCHFIELD, because he set up, it's an amazing story. His ancestor was the Dauphin. Yeah. The Marie Antoinette's son, the Dauphin, he did not die in a cell. A little boy was put in his place and switched over, and he was sent to America. And there was a 1950s movie called Dangerous Exile, and it's a banned movie from the 1950s because it tells the truth of what happened to the Dauphin. And I think movies like The Man in the Iron Mask and The Prince and the Pauper are based on that. The switching of the poor child and the rich child to save the rich child's life, the prince. So, and it's Brian SETCHFIELD, something to do with he's got some hair that belonged to him, to the Dauphin. It's DNA. And Brian SETCHFIELD, as I said, he's from Seaford, and he set up Crime Stoppers. And just to say, a little sideline thing, it's nothing much. It's really strange to think that when I was 11 years old in 1993, there was an open day at Seaford Police Station. And it was fun because I had my mugshot taken, my fingerprints taken, and it was just a bit of fun. And it was an open day to the public, and they showed what some people think a police cell looks like, and it was dark with a plastic rat in there and straw, like something from hundreds of years ago. And then another police cell showing a TV, Garfield stuffed toys and luxuries. And then they said this is what a police cell really does look like. And the irony that as part of this social engineering, if you like, I've been arrested so many times in the past 8 years as a part of my mental breakdown. It's all socially engineered, as well as being part of the corruption. But I just thought it's very interesting that Brian SETCHFIELD is from Seaford. But we've all got a story to tell. This is what I'm saying. my grandmother, my blood grandmother, who I was just talking about, was related to Anne Boleyn, talking of beheadings. And she was blood related to her, my blood grandmother that I was just talking about, adoptive grandmother. And I'm named after Anne Boleyn because of my middle name. My grandmother was Annie, and I'm Anna. So, yeah. And it's Bullen, because there's more than one way of spelling Boleyn. Bulle or Boley. And I actually wrote to Jim will Fix It, because either I wanted to get the BBC to make me a costume, or my mother was going to make me a costume. She never did, so I'm going to have to do it myself. But anyway, I just thought I'd just cover all these interesting subjects, and there we go.